Hi, I'm Debbie Carman. I'm an artist in Laguna Beach, California.
Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning. How are you, Leslie?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for meeting with me today and
Absolutely.
letting us capture your story.
Thank you.
The first question I want to ask you to start our conversation is, what do you think people's first impression of you is?
Perhaps as extravagant or eclectic.
So expand on that a little bit. Tell me why you would think that people think you're eclectic.
I dress rather flamboyantly and colorfully. I'm very imaginative in the way I speak and convey myself to others, I think.
So you're an artist.
I'm an artist.
And Debbie, where are you from?
I'm actually born in Ohio, but I came to California when I was 2 months old by my great-grandparents, and they were in their late 80s when they took me, and their parents were in the Civil War. So we had a small chicken farm in Pomona, and my grandfather was a Pentecostal preacher.
Wow. So tell me about growing up. That sounds like a really interesting...
I was homeschooled by my great-grandparents. My mother and her mother had about 14 years difference in their ages. My mother had 6 husbands, and her mother had 5 husbands. So there were a lot of men in their lives and a lot of excitement in their careers. My mother was a hair model for Clairol, and my grandmother owned motels in Long Beach and Pomona, California. And they were glamorous girls that came to California at a young age and started life out here, and I'm sure seeking fame and fortune, and found a lot of very, very interesting men. And so I stayed with my great-grandparents, and they raised me and homeschooled me, and I went home to live with my mother for the first time when I was 14.
So did you follow in mom and grandma's and auntie's footsteps and have yourself 5 husbands?
No, I didn't, actually. I was a little more driven with survival, and I was dependent upon my own resources, so I had to get a job. I usually had 2 or 3 jobs at the same time from the time I was 17 years old, whether it was answering telephones or running bead weld in a muffler shop, or working at a library service that was acquired by University Microfilms that was acquired by Xerox. I went from there to the semiconductor industry and became pretty well schooled in semiconductors and monolithic ceramic multi-layer capacitors, miniaturization of diodes, and everything was going from large room-sized computing devices to handheld miniature devices. So it was a very interesting transitory period in technology. So I had a lot of exposure in the early days with liquid crystal displays and light emitting diodes and a lot of technological things. I am not trained formally to understand any of that, but I was exposed to it, and I did very well in my occupation as being in the computer industry. I was vice president group executive of a company called GTI, Glass Tide Industries, and they were kind of an offshoot of ITT Semiconductor.
So when you say you didn't have any formal education, did you go to college?
No.
So high school was it?
High school was barely it. I was in school from the time I was about 14 till 17.
Okay. So when we discuss no formal training in computers, we talk about no college. Tell me a little bit about the art we're sitting in the middle of.
Well, everything is sort of empirically gleaned. I had an opportunity to buy a flower shop in Corona del Mar, and I seized the moment and bought the flower shop. Speculative. I knew nothing about floral design or event planning or all the things that went into the accoutrements of being a florist. So I acquired a flower shop in Corona del Mar, and I was able to parlay that into 3 additional flower shops and an event planning business. And I was very, very successful for a very, very long time. And about 14 or 15 years into that, I had one of those cataclysmic shifts, kind of a psychic change, where I saw that the industry, the dynamics of the floral industry were changing. There were bucket shops emerging on every street corner. There were floral displays in grocery stores and chain markets. There were conroys popping up on every street corner. I decided I wanted to do something very creative, very expressive, very colorful, very endearing, very inspirational, very engaging, and very stimulating in my life. And I wanted it to be with color and cartoon art and strong messages. I felt that what I needed, or what I had lacked most of my life, was positive reinforcement through positive messaging. And so I decided to start cartooning, and I started drawing little cats. And I have no formal training. I have no art education. I know nothing really about art. I know something about technique now because I'm empirically trained. I sat with pencil and paper and started sketching and drawing cats. And after about 4 months, I thought I was improving. But when I looked at the cats, I would look at my cats and other cat artists, and there was something distinctively wrong with my cats. And what I realized is that I'd drawn them all with the paws upside down, as if, help me. And that was sort of the cathartic metamorphosis for where I was in my life. It was that stage of, help me with this possibility, help me with this dream, help me with this change, this transmutation of who I have never been into something really creative and expressive. And that was how it began. Started drawing and painting acrylic cats, and doing little, writing expressive and emotive and engaging euphemisms and aphorisms and witticisms, and marrying them to my little cat cartoons. And one of the first ones I ever drew, which we can show you from the gallery, is a cat and dog hanging under a dress that's hanging on a hanger, which says, "A day hemmed in hope will not unravel." And that was sort of the cathartic beginning of where I was in my life. And I still get up every day and say, "A day hemmed in hope will not unravel." So it's been interesting. And then I started drawing dogs at my mother's suggestion. I had developed a really close relationship with my mother late in life. And she felt that the dog industry and the variety of breeds available to dogs and the way I cartooned would be a beautiful amalgam. So I started drawing dachshunds and shih tzus and pugs and golden retrievers and beagles and every kind of dog. And there are 1 million, maybe 10 million artists that are more talented than myself. But I found a clever niche, and I pursued it, and I dogged it, so to speak. I then thought, well, in addition to cartooning and painting, maybe these would be darling on ceramics. And nobody was doing an art style, a very, very distinctive art style in ceramics. So I bought a ceramic book. I talked to a fellow who was involved in the ceramic business in the local community. I bought a potter's wheel. I learned to throw clay. I learned to fire clay. I learned to paint. I learned what glazes. And I had experimented with thousands and thousands of processes and techniques and colors and firing temperatures. And then I got into sculpting. I thought, you know what? I can go to Williams-Sonoma and get a garlic press and make curly hair for a dog, or get a pasta extruder and make long curly straggles that'll look good on a dog. And I began building forms, and structurally I'm not gifted anatomically, but I have a feel for how I want them to look. And I love sculpting. I especially love sculpting dog faces. But so the cartooning and the art style led to a gallery, and the gallery led to a interesting company, Russ Berry Company, coming to me. They were the largest gift company in the world at the time, and they liked my character art, and they saw a couple of properties that they wanted to develop, and so that was the beginning. And they chose 6 characters and built a significant licensing license for merchandise around those characters. And I got the idea that maybe those characters needed a backstory. So I started cartooning and writing a backstory in kind of rhyming iambic pentameter. And I wrote 6 books called the Bowsers and Meowsers series. And they're all life lessons that I learned the hardest possible way, about suiting up and showing up and participating, not about winning, but about pursuing the dream about dancing, even if you don't have music or don't have any formal training. You don't need to hear music to dance. You tap into your heartstrings and give your feelings a chance. One of the books was about learning lessons and obeying the rules and the consequences when you don't and the rewards when you do. And the other one was about dog ownership and the responsibility of having a pet. And one was about prejudice, about a big fat blue cat whose best friend, Missy the mouse, was quite comfortable here in his house, who was not bothered by color. Large sizes or smaller, and the rarest to find was a mouse colorblind. And that sort of was the same way I felt about not having prejudices against anything, about seeing us all as equals, and about respecting everything in the planet that was precious and unique and distinctive. So we do the world's most beautiful pet ceramics, dog bowls, treat jars, pet urns, wall sculpture, clocks, platters, plates. We do a lot of breed dog trophy art, so I'm one of the leading national trophy artists in the United States for breed dog trophies. We're very excited about the future and the future of faux pas and the art of Debbie Carman. Who would have thought?
I was going to say, did you ever think that this is where you would be right now?
Never.
It's quite incredible. I mean, we met because I walked into your studio off the street just because I loved the colors and I wanted to see the art.
And it's characters and art with heart because everybody smiles in the same language. That's the hook, is that regardless of the age demographic, regardless of the culture, regardless of the ethnic distinction, everyone reacts and smiles in the same language, that we all express ourselves. We emote when we're joyful. And this is about color, and there's nothing more joyful than pets, and there's nothing more cartoony than dogs and cats and mice and chimpanzingos and elephandandies and hippopreposteruses and alleycroctors and cuckoo loons. So I have an imaginative mind, and I'm very, very expressive. So again, it's as unbelievable to me as it might be to somebody else that sees it for the first time.
Well, I'm so happy for you that this is going so well and you're getting to express yourself in your passion.
Exactly.
I have two questions for you. The first one is, what would be something that would surprise people to know about you?
Probably that I have absolutely no education or training.
That would, especially with how beautiful your art is sitting all around you. The dog bowls you described are behind you, adorable little dog pieces to your right and to your left. And then the last question that I have to kind of close out our conversation is, if you're walking down the street, as I'm sure you do here in Laguna Beach a lot, and you had the opportunity, as the streets are very busy on the weekends or even during the week, and people were passing you by, and you could just hold up a sign that would say one thing about Debbie Carman, and that way they would know one thing about you, what would it be?
Possibility.
I love it. The possibilities are endless in our world, right?
Endless.
And just look at what you're doing.
All you need is the desire to dream. Everything is attainable. Everything is achievable. And I didn't come to start. I came to finish.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Leslie.
Absolutely.